personal life experiences early on in my life. I was born with some learning disabilities, and I had this ability really young. I just knew what I knew. I was able to see things and hear and just kind of know people's truth in the presence when I was a kid. And there was periods of time in my life that it was just shut down because it wasn't part of the world. You just didn't know clairaudient. You just didn't know those things. It wasn't discussed in the house I was raised in, religion I was raised in. And then feeling, and with my learning disabilities and how it affected my life and made me separate from what I thought was normal, really put me kind of on an internal path to prove that I could be normal and be just as good as everybody else. And so I got into college and through college and young adult and life experiences, I kind of found that everybody has their insecurities and their doubts of who they are depending on their background. But it was really when I had a midlife crisis just after I was married and I lost my job, and I realized I grew up meeting a lot of expectations in my family for my parents, and I was identifying with a briefcase and pantyhose and a suit and having a job of who I was at a very young age already, and other things that I identified with. So I was lost, and I met a woman, a teacher, and she began to open me up to myself, and that there are different ways of looking at the world, and awakening when I was a child, that knowing again. I mean, it's clairaudient, clairvoyant kind of thing, but at the same time, it's more than that. And that's kind of began this inward journey for me. And in the process, having 3 children, and having those children not only teach me, but my youngest struggled while he was in utero with me and post, just after he was born. And there was a moment in which I really called him into his body and asked him to be present in this life, and that his dad and brother and sister and I needed to get forward. And there was this feeling that he was doubting whether he really wanted to be here. So I called him and demanded. I actually got in his little face in the hospital and said, "Get here now." And instead of going to Children's on a ventilator, he went home on oxygen. And then I was also told he'd be on low-grade antibiotics and steroids as an infant, and that just didn't work with me. I just had experienced somebody in my life on steroids, and that's not a good thing. They don't communicate with that. And at times, the medical system and I were at odds. And I found an acupuncturist here in Colorado who set up the boards. I never had to nebulize him. I never took him in to National Jewish Hospital to go through all this litany of tests and drugs. And I started to see that there are options in this world. There are possibilities, even though somebody tells me this is the way and it doesn't align with me. That doesn't mean it's the way. There's got to be a choice in there. And that's not how the world teaches us, is to trust, to put all this information and wisdom out there and align it with us. So that's where I was in my 20s. And all the way through school systems, district, government, just whatever the outside forces that are, I began to know that there was their way and then there was mine. And it wasn't always eye to eye. And in the meantime, I learned massage therapy, and I put my hands on people, and I could feel their energy. I could feel why they came to me. And it was always just so beautiful. And the result was their transformation. And I began to love who I was in watching them learn to accept and love who they were. So trust in your truth evolved into learning to love who you are. That's an aspect, a huge aspect of it. So I learned a lot of different healing modalities, And that all began to awaken that whole intuitive aspect. And again, that's another part of trusting my truth and figuring out what it is that a client or somebody in my workshop, how do they get to that place?